Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everyone. So we're going to be having a discussion with students just to find out a little bit about the online experience and how it's been going for students, both the positives and the negatives. And then at the end, if students have any advice for profs as they're planning their courses now. So I guess the first thing is like, how is everyone doing? Are you all doing pretty good? Like thumbs up? Yeah,
Pretty well.
pretty good. All right. So it's been a tough sort of semester for some, and for some other students, it's been like a really enjoyable experience. So I guess we'll just start off.
So I would say like when the semester started, I think like almost everybody was like a little bit anxious about the semester starting. Everyone's new to this experience and we weren't certain of how it was going to go. So definitely like I felt the same way too. And I was definitely like anxious about how the assessments are going to be taken, how our class is going to be taken. But overall, like I think so far it's been really good. And it's definitely been like a positive experience so far. There's a lot of transitions happening. There's a lot of new things going on. But what I really like is that the profs are being a lot more flexible this semester because they understand that this is a new transition and it's new for them too, moving everything online. So I really like that how the profs have been really flexible. They've been constantly like checking in on our mental health as well, which I think is really good. In terms of like the classes themselves, I typically like prefer the synchronous classes, just because I feel like that's still kind of like resembles the feeling of a classroom. Whereas like the asynchronous classes, like I know they're set up for convenience and time zones and things, but at the same time, I feel like being asynchronous kind of like removes that feeling of being in the class. And it's just like when you're watching it online, it's just like watching any video. So like you can like, get distracted by things and priorities sort of just shift that way. So it's been kind of hard to stay on track of things in terms of the asynchronous classes. But in terms of the synchronous classes, like I really like those ones. And I think the profs have really been trying to incorporate more like interactive activities too, to just make the class more engaging online. So I think that's been really helpful so far.
So personally for me, the online transition I think wasn't any big of a change because even before COVID-19, I used to record as many lectures as possible and listen to them later on at night. So this was great for me because now everything's online. So like everything's recorded and I don't even have to put in that extra effort. Also, I feel like because there's no commuting aspect to it, even with professors, like they're more willing to meet you outside of office hours as well because they just have to click a button and be online, and you have to do the same. So I feel, and also as Hannah mentioned earlier, they're also doing a lot more interactive activities and that engage the class. And I don't think there were that many before in person. So I think it's been a positive experience for me as well.
I wanted to go back to asynchronous classes. I'm taking two of them, and I feel like it does have, the positives of everything being recorded and you don't have to show up. You kind of just have to watch, and that's your only task. But I feel like it is hard because we don't really develop a relationship with any professor. It's really like not personal. And I think it's a struggle because you don't offer, a chance for students to discuss the topics or like interact or even ask questions. Like you kind of have to like go out of your way and email a professor to ask a question or like go on the discussion board. So I think it depends, and I think it's also a matter of preference. Like some people do enjoy these more. Personally, like I don't, and I think I'm gonna keep that in mind for next semester. But yeah, and also I think another point is I feel like in terms of assignments, I feel like for asynchronous courses, you really have to depend on Quarkus and like the syllabus to know what's coming up and what's due next week and what's due after that. Like the prof doesn't really mention any assignments, maybe through like an announcement on Quarkus, and that's it. But it's really like on you, and you have to do the work to make sure you're on track.
Some things I agree with all of you in terms of the asynchronous class. It's not the best for me either. But I do have to note that sometimes, I don't know if it's the case for all of you as well, but because it is online and technically our quizzes and assignments are open book, some of the professors have been, I guess, harder in terms of grading. And they do tell us, they're like, oh, make sure, we're going to grade you harder as usual because you're technically allowed to have your notes and internet and everything. And I think that's kind of the bad side of online experience, just because before we would just memorize or have everything in our minds before going to an exam. And yeah, I don't know if any of you can relate to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop onto that and say I exactly relate to that. I've realized that classes now, professors are designing tests to minimize cheating rather than 100% testing information. Classes I've had that used to be purely memorization based, since classes are now and tests are now technically open book, they've started to try and turn those memorization based questions to application based. So a lot of students don't have like past tests to go off on to study. So a lot of students are feeling pretty lost when it comes to assessments because it's very new for classes that have been going for years, and now suddenly the test format is completely different.
Well, that's a really interesting point. I had never thought of like previous tests or practice tests. That's actually a really interesting point. Thanks for raising that, Mystica. Mackenzie, did you have anything that you wanted to share in terms of like how things have been going so far?
Yeah, so I found with asynchronous classes, my biggest issue is the focus aspect of it. When you have all the control and you're able to pause as you go and go back, I find that not only does it take a lot more time, but it's also just very easy to get distracted by other things going on in school at the same time. And I find with assessments, especially like midterms and things, a lot of the time there isn't a lot of clarity as to how they're going to be structured. So you really go into those assessments blind, and it's not like in a regular school setting where you go to the exam center and you can say, okay, I'm going to strategize and do short answer first, or I'm going to do multiple choice first. A lot of the time you aren't given the option to go back and forth between questions in online formatted tests, which, raises anxiety a little bit for sure.
Do you feel, or does it seem like there's actually more work that's being required of you this semester than you might normally have encountered like in a fall semester? Or is that just something that is like false? Like, do you feel like there's actually more small assignments, more work overall for you? And maybe we'll just do like a quick thumbs up if you think that there is more work this semester online, thumbs up, or if you don't think that it is, you just keep your hand down, I guess. Okay, so most of you feel like there's a little bit more work. Okay, interesting. So Brady, how's the online experience been for you?
I think the biggest thing is like there's a big trade-off between online learning and in-person learning. Like what Mackenzie said, it was like, yeah, like asynchronous, you have a lot of control on your hand. But like a lot of students, when they're listening to these lecture recordings, or like me specifically, I like to listen to them not on the like original speed. I like to like speed it up, but then sometimes it like gets a little bit out of hand, and I'm like listening to the lecture recording on 2 times the speed, not thinking that I'm retaining these information, but actually not retaining anything. Yeah, because like before the online thing, when we're in person, you listen to the original speed in person first, and then you're just listening to gather more information when you're listening to the recordings. And I think that's where but this time the recording is like our first-hand experience of learning, whereas so not a lot of information will be retained for if we just listen to it even on 1.5, 2 times the speed.
I think I actually enjoy the asynchronous ones because online studying, my sleep schedule has been kind of messed up. I don't know about other people. So because I'm studying at night and stuff, so oftentimes I cannot actually focus when I have synchronous lectures. So and then sometimes it's just nice to have asynchronous or recording so I can go back to them. Just because the sleep schedule is a problem for me.
My positive, I think, is going to be controversial now because a lot of people said that they don't really like application-based assignments that we're being given right now. But for me, I really like them because this is my last year of undergrad. I will be applying for a master's and PhD after this. So I like to get in the mode, I guess, of those application-based tests now instead of memorization-based. I think they're really helping me build a ground for my future studies. and I should be able to think like a researcher or a scientist at this point in my undergrad. Also, I feel like when we're having more written assignments and our professors are checking it, it gives them a chance to actually read our work. And that would also help us a lot if we're trying to get letter of recommendations or something. Whereas in MCQ based tests, like even if you do get 100%, you're not really showing them how you think or anything like that. So I think this gives the professors a chance to get to know us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I have to agree with Amna, because I think it's amazing that we can do the application-based test now. I'm also in my last year of university, and I am enjoying like doing the thinking that way. I've had courses which are starting to do more case studies to prepare us for these application-based tests. So these case studies allow me to think like that and get into that mindset of proper higher academia and higher research. One thing I also really enjoyed is the accessibility of everything. Most of my classes have now added CC to the recordings, the closed captioning, which have increased accessibility. There's transcripts for a lot of my classes. So even if we didn't catch something the professor said, if something was misheard, we do have closed captioning that could always be gone back and read again. So I really enjoyed the accessibility that online classes have given students.
I find that one of the biggest flaws just with academia nowadays is I find that it's very centered on one type of learning style. A lot of my classes, especially in my program, are like 90% or 100% test-based through quizzes and midterms. So I found that this semester, obviously to compensate for not being able to proctor people some of the time, there's been a lot more assignments and a lot more project-based work. And not only do I feel like that's accommodating a little bit more for my learning style, but it's also making me feel a lot more integrated in my program and like I'm really absorbing the information, which has been nice.
I mean, I think I just want to touch back on that engagement piece, because I think like with online learning, before the semester started, there was like such a big concern that it wouldn't be as engaging. And so because of that, like profs put in like extra work, in my opinion, to like make sure that their students felt like the classes were still interactive. And so like some of my classes have like breakout groups where we like just meet with 2 or 3 students, or we have like interactive assignments where we have to like actually go into a group and discuss something and then come back to the class and present it. So then these are all like activities that we weren't doing necessarily in person before, where we would just go write notes and then come back and then study for an exam. Whereas now there's like so many more engagement pieces. And I think that in itself is like a way for me to learn better. Because personally, like I really like learning through like doing things rather than just reading it. So I think the interactive portions that the profs have incorporated in some of the classes has been really helpful.
I agree with what I think Amna mentioned with the assignments. I think it's a lot. It's also just, I feel like in science courses, at least at U of T, it's been like multiple choice questions, which is good and bad, but it's like a bit, you kind of get used to it. And I felt like I was losing my like scientific writing, skills. But this year has been definitely like helpful in improving that aspect. I also really like how some finals are going to be not synchronous, like we get like 24 hours or 48 hours. I think that's really accommodating, and I think it's helpful because you end up, really like looking over the material versus if it was a multiple choice online. You can just, it's open book, of course, but it's like I feel like you study less, and then it's maybe even more stressful personally. Like if I'm like using an open book test and I'm like just looking at, trying to find the information, not really like understanding, I'm just like stressed and trying to find the answer. Whereas like in a written thing, you actually have to like understand and you have the time to do that.
Yeah, I think especially on the flexibility, like what Ella mentioned beforehand, or I think it was Megan, but in terms of, because some classes are asynchronous, we kind of have the ability to build our own schedule. And, some people like to, I rather wake up early and sleep early at night. So it kind of allows me to just put my classes wherever I want them to be. And also the fact that there's no commute to school or anything, it just reduced the time of wasting time, I guess. Even though I miss seeing my friends and, hang out with them, I feel like we have way more time to study now, which is good and bad at the same time. But definitely focus on school has been a lot this year. Like also that's kind of stressful. Yeah, so I think online is good and bad, but it does have positive things like all of you mentioned. The engagement part is for sure, like in terms I have a language class, and before we wouldn't really have too many small groups, but now we have a lot more like breakout rooms, which is great.
I think they mentioned a lot of like good points, but yeah, for me it's like the small breakout rooms, because usually I'm kind of shy when I have to like share my thoughts in tutorial in person, but for some reason like through like breakout room I'm more comfortable for some reason, and it's just nice to have like, because I'm used to have like big classes, and then but then now we have like a tutorial of like 20 people and a breakout room for like 3-4 people, so like it's really nice to be able to like talk and then discuss some materials. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is that sometimes, like, we can, with these asynchronous courses, we can just like, if you're not feeling it that day, you can just not do it that day. You can just do it another day. Especially because like I live in Vancouver and our nickname is called Raincouver. So some days it's just really gloomy and really just dark, and you're just not in the vibe. You're just like, you just really want to lay in bed and just, you know, chill. But if you're like actually doing in person, you have to like drag yourself out of bed, you have to climb, get dressed, go to school, and then, you know, start studying, and it actually look presentable in lecture. But then if you're just, right now we're just all little black squares on a little screen, and you can just, you know, chill in bed even looking at the lit video recordings.
Well, on that topic, since you mentioned it, how many of you voluntarily, not being asked to or feeling like you're forced to, actually will turn on your webcam and your microphone? Like, is that something that you normally do? Yeah, okay, all right. Interesting. It depends. Okay. It's really interesting.
For me, it has to do with a lot of live time tests. For me, since they're open book, I tend to end up studying less because I'm like, oh, I could always Control F my notes because there's always that chance. So it's gotten me to the thinking of, oh, it's open book, so I don't have to study as much. And then when it comes to live test, it's very fast. Whereas when it comes to written assignments that are also open book, I find that I learn way better with those. For me, the main stressor is these live tests because it produces another sort of anxiety in me to finish the test as quick as possible and try and get all the answers right. But since I have the answers with me, getting the application right at the same time is a huge another stressor.
I think the main stress for me is just that most of my courses now, actually all of my courses now, have small assignments throughout the semester instead of 2 to 3 big ones that are just like in the middle midterm season and then a final season. I realized that this is just a way that professors are trying to keep the students engaged with the course, but it does end in inevitable burnout. And I feel like I've been getting a lot more tired this year than I did in the years before. And it's only October, or I guess November now. So I think that's the main stressor for me.
Yeah, a couple things. So the first one just being assessment structure. A lot of the time it's not indicated whether or not you're going to be able to go back and forth on multiple choice questions, which can be a little stressful because obviously that's not what would happen in a typical real life setting. But also just the technological aspect of things. There's always that chance that you're going to have an internet problem during a midterm or something like that. And there's just a lot of anxiety that there won't be an accommodation for that because a lot of the time you can't prove things. You know, you can't prove that you got kicked out of your browser. You can't prove that your Wi-Fi cut out. So it's just kind of having that stress on top of the actual assessment stress, I would say.
I agree with what everyone said, but I think more personal to me, I live in a building and there's a lot of like construction noises, and it's so awkward when, you know, I'm like in the middle of like talking and then there's like some noise upstairs. Like it's just awkward. Obviously people are understanding, it's not like, you know, but yeah, that's just one thing I'm thinking of right now.
For me, it's like the use of PorterU, for example.
Ooh.
So yeah, I had it just like a few days ago, and it was really nerve-wracking just to get myself prepared to be in that kind of like the test format, because like I think the professor posted like a document about what we need to keep in mind. So for me, it was like you have to go through this test your equipment, and then for some reason my laptop didn't pass, and I had to like contact like the life technician, which took a while too, and then they fixed it. But and then even during the exam, they said that you have to have a mirror or something around you just to prove that your surrounding area or something like that. And then for me personally, during the exam, one of the picture didn't load. So it was a 60-minute exam. So the whole process actually ended up taking like 10 minutes during the exam. And then all I could do was like stare at the screen and wait for the proctor to tell me if I can refresh the page. So yeah, so I ended up just like my pace was disrupted, and then like I couldn't do anything, and I can't even like get up or something because like that looks suspicious. So yeah, so I think because I feel like some professors feel like they think that if we don't use ProtoU and some students just gonna cheat, I feel like there's like not a lot of trust going on sometimes. So but then I feel like they need to consider about like just like technical difficulties happen, and it's not always like we don't want it to happen too, but it just happens.
Yeah, I think this semester has been a lot more stressful than usual because of so many assignments, especially like the midterm season. Like for the past 3 weeks, I feel like I've had no breaks. Like for every single course, we have assignments and then midterms, and we still have to stay on top of our lectures. And then I have a lot of small classes. So like I always have to put on my camera and like, be able to talk and show that I have done the readings and everything. And so to be always present and like being on top of all the assignments and everything is very stressful for me. But I feel like professors are understanding, and like they sometimes, if we email them a week before about deadlines, they're very accommodating. They will understand like, oh, we can extend the due date and everything. So that's a good thing.
I think the two biggest stressor for me this semester was the professors changing the grading requirement or like the grading criteria of assignments, or like they might not change it, but then everyone who's doing it is expecting them to grade harder because first is open book, second is like you have a lot more time to do it, and then the second one would be like a 3-hour class and there's just no breaks in between, and there's like no time to talk, to socialize or talk to your friends during the lecture. Because like this year was the first year that I really like realized that the 10 minutes between each hour of break that we can talk to our friends during lecture is actually what's keeping us sane from like not going from like these 3-hour lectures. But now it's just professors just turn off the camera and you just kind of like you go on your bed where you just stare at the screen, go on YouTube for 10 minutes, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, I would say like attendance is like the biggest stressor for me. Like some of the classes are like taking like attendance in our synchronous classes, and like it's fine because I'm always showing up to class. But I remember like I think like the second week of class, like I usually like have everything set up on my desk, but like my laptop just shut off in the middle of class. And I like plugged in my charger, which was right next to it, but like my charger wasn't working for some reason. So then I was just like frantically like looking around the house for like another charger for my laptop. And I ended up like logging in through my phone. So I think like terms like that, like just like times like that just like make me a little bit stressed. And like now whenever I'm writing like an exam, like I know some people already discussed like exams like that are live, but now I'm always just worried, like what if my laptop shuts off in the middle of exam? What am I going to do in that situation? So it's like it's always just like in the back of my mind, like what if this happens? So it's not necessarily like the fault of the profs, but it's just like the way that it's structured being online. It's an added stress.
Yes, before we get to the last sort of topic, I'm just curious, so some of the themes that have been coming out, different marking scheme seems to be like a common thing. Do you all feel like you're being evaluated a little bit more rigorously than you might not have had if it was a normal class? Do you feel that that's true? Yeah. So if you agree, yes, no? Okay. And also, do you feel like your profs are emphasizing like academic integrity more, whether it's overtly or like just by not letting you go back on your assignments? Like, is that something that you are internalizing as students? Yeah. Okay, it's really interesting. Okay.
I think for me, it's also encouragement. They're in a place of difficulty too. This is a new time for both us students and profs, and it comes from a place of encouragement. One thing I absolutely adore about these online classes now is how flexible professors are being, and I want to encourage them to keep being flexible and be understanding, because a lot of students are going through a lot right now. And I really hope that that's maintained throughout the year. I know burnout is still a thing that happens. So to remain like that for the rest of the winter semester as well would be very helpful.
My answer is pretty simple. It pretty much just centers around communication. I think that the biggest source of anxiety during this entire time that's happening right now is just uncertainty, whether that be, outside of school or in school. So just if professors could communicate with their students as much as they can about formatting, how the semester is going to look, and just kind of keep checking in and making sure that everyone's up to speed, I think that would be really helpful. And I definitely would appreciate that a lot in my classes.
I think it's very important that they do care about students' mental health and how everyone's doing. And also, I don't have any of this issue because all my classes are recorded, but I've heard stories about some classes that are not recorded, and I think they should consider that many students are not in Canada. And like, I have a student, a person in my class who's in Tokyo, and he has to have class at 11 p.m. or even some at 3 a.m. And I think that's not very considerate for professors. So if they could have that in mind, that, like tests should be 24 hours, or that they should record their lectures, just so that students can have this flexibility of not having school at night and sleeping during the day.
I just have two things. One of them is communication, like Mackenzie said. Like, I think right now a lot of profs are changing their finals, they're changing their midterms, the way they're going to be tested. So we can't really rely on past tests. We kind of just have to expect the prof to let us know what it's going to look like. And for my courses, like a lot of the courses didn't offer us that yet. So we're kind of just waiting. And then I think another thing is, I don't know if this is possible, but if exam, like final dates, could be released early since everything is online, I think that would be really helpful, especially for students who want to go back home and see like family and things. Yeah, that's it.
I think I'm just gonna add on what Julie said, because for one of my course we have like a group project, and at first they wanted to do like synchronous like live presentation, and my partner is actually in China, and then that means he'll be presenting at like 2 a.m. And then so I feel like it would be nice if like professors can keep in mind that like we sometimes don't get to choose like which time zone we're in. So it'd be nice to provide like flexibility in terms like group project, because I know it's like important part of like life science courses.
Yeah, just so like you guys don't have to try like to expect to be like 100% with all this like online learning stuff. Like, us students aren't 100% with it. We're not expecting all the profs to be 100% with it. Like, we're all like, both parties are learning in the process. This is like during a very difficult time. Like, like university was never fully online before, like, right? So this is the first year, and I don't know, I don't really want to say history, but like for a very long time that university has been like fully online without, because the dean just came out with a message saying like high flex, or I don't know what the U of T is calling it, like the flexible thing where you can do in person and online might get canceled in the winter as well, and they fully canceled the fall semester ones. So just, like the both parties should be like cooperating and learning together during these difficult times.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with like what everyone has said so far. And I just wanted to add, like, I would request like all the profs to schedule office hours if they can, because a lot of my classes, like the profs have just canceled office hours, or they've moved it to just discussion boards, or they're like one-on-one appointments only if you like want them. And you would have to like request for that whenever you want them. So I think like having scheduled office hours like really helped me, because like I would just go into them even if I didn't have questions, and then maybe if I heard somebody else's question and the prof started like discussing a topic, then I would like maybe come up with a question and, you know, be able to clarify some topics in that sense. And also just it's a way to connect with the prof too. So I would really just ask like that the prof still maintain that in some way and just hold scheduled office hours.
Yeah, I think some of the suggestions that I have are really just like highlights of the opinions everyone else has mentioned. But first, I would really like to say that just as our work comes off when we're putting in effort, like we do notice like our professors putting in effort, and that really encourages us to work better in that course. And a lot of my professors have been working really hard, that I've noticed. For example, some of my professors in the fall as well as the summer semester that I did implemented this, and it helped me tremendously, which was that when they were changing marking schemes or just like I guess making up syllabus, during the first lecture they reserved some time to discuss it with us. And one of my professors specifically, they had a vote on the deadlines and what kind of assignments we wanted, which was great. I think because obviously because of the time zones and everything, like not everybody could do synchronous presentations. And another thing that I noticed was that I know that it is not always possible to have like soft deadlines and be lenient with deadlines, but a lot of my professors are implementing them. And if you email them earlier, that's been great, because again, like we have a lot of smaller written assignments now. It's not just a midterm that's due one day and I can be done with it in 2 hours, and then I have the rest of the day to for another exam. If like just last Monday, I had 4 midterms in one day, which was really hard for me. And I think my professors were really understanding when I said that I am really sorry, but I just cannot write this midterm within this 24 hours, that I know that it is 24 hours, but I cannot. And I think the last thing that I would want to mention again is just that professors and students need to trust each other alike, just because a lot of the difficulties and that we're having now are not something that we can prove. Like, I don't know, how do we prove that our internet connection just shut down, or like our laptop just didn't want, like it got stuck or frozen. So I think when we email our professor saying that this happened during the lecture, they would just have to trust us for the most part. I think those are all my suggestions for next year.
Wow, those are some amazing comments and some amazing insight. I'd have to say that there's a lot that profs should be able to take away. Creating a culture of trust, which some of my colleagues at UTM and other places are really emphasize. I'm hoping that that also gets emphasized for all of you. Thank you all for taking the time and sharing your thoughts, your insights, your struggles, your successes, and for also helping to get the message out about what the online environment looks like for everyone that's in this space right now. So, and also thank you so much for thinking about your profs. I think all of you at one point or another did mention that you see what is kind of happening and that we are indeed all in this together. And thank you so much for sharing your time.